Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Can you guess what I'm going to be talking about in this video?
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
Games Workshop really kindly sent me this set a little ahead of time to take a look at, but mostly to paint a couple of miniatures for a painting article. But I think the set is very, very cool, and I was really excited to paint the Astra Militarum as part of a project I'm building for one of my own armies, which is really cool. So I'm painting a couple of them and showing you how I did it in this video. Now, my own little Astra Militarum project has been quite a slow burn, and I've got lots of units that I only painted very much to sort of battle ready if I'm going to use Games Workshop's terminology. I have finished my Rogal Dawn. There's a video on this, including the Commissar as well. I'll try and remember to put links in for those now, should you wish to go and watch them. The uniforms I'm painting these troops out today are going to be based on the uniforms that you can see here for the crew, just slightly less leather. Here is one of the artillery pieces. You actually see the uniform slightly clearer that I'll be covering in this video today, so less sort of body armour in the leather colour, and these are the actual miniatures. The pictures were kindly shared on the Warcom article that I received the set for. Now, I don't play Kill Team. I'm sure I'll get around to it at some point. I've had the rules sitting on my shelf for a long time, but this is a really cool set. As soon as I saw it on the reveal, I knew I wanted to get hold of it to paint it, and I will be painting the other side of this box set for a while. But because I'm working on that Astra Militarum project that I will be adding to quite a lot in the build up to 11th edition, and probably well after that, no doubt it will be out before I've finished all of the work I need to do. And I'm also painting some Space Wolves, but this was a really cool set. I'm sure that many of you will be pre-ordering it this weekend, and thank you again to Games Workshop for sending it out to me. All the things you normally expect in there. I'm not going to go through and review all the rules and things. As I've already said, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to Kill Team, so there'll be little point, but it's a typical Games Workshop product. Extremely well presented as always. The cards look really cool, so if you are looking at it from a Kill Team perspective, it's a really cool thematic set. I love the narrative behind it as well, but I will be taking the narrative for this onto a bigger tabletop, and those Astra Militarum will be joining my army rather than just as a skirmish force, but one day in the future maybe. So I've had this a few weeks, and when I started building them, I was kind of keeping in mind that I wanted to use these for 40k, and at this point they hadn't released the stats for 40k, so I wasn't sure whether they were going to have a separate stat line for 40k. And I was looking through the instructions, and each unit member had the two build options, so a normal las rifle and the Kill Team build, and that's why I didn't build them all in one go. I only built the ones that I painted for the article, and then I was very relieved when these stats were released earlier on this week. It means I can go and build the rest of the unit now, and essentially still use them the same way as the Kill Team makeup as well, which makes sense. But I didn't want to go ahead and build the Kill Team and find out that all the weapon loads didn't work out for me. There's completely unremarkable in terms of the building. They're modern day Games Workshop miniatures. I didn't find any issues at all. There's a few mold lines as you don't expect, but they went together really nicely, and I didn't have any problems clearing them up. So these are the paints that I'm using for the sort of the base for all of my troops in this whole army project. I couldn't remember them completely. I had to go back and check my old tank video, which I was showing you earlier on, or referenced earlier on. And if you want to know all the paints that I use in this project, the best place to check them is to check my Patreon out. There'll be a free post not long after this video goes out, which shows all of the paints and things that I use in this video. If you don't want to do that, it is free to do that. You don't have to be a paid member to access that article, but if you don't want to go there, you can just pause this video every time I hold up the paints to camera, which I think I do for everything that I use. I don't think I leave anything out. But while I'm rambling away there about paint, you can see what I'm doing. I'm using my black primed miniature, and I'm using an airbrush. I'm gently building up layers of the darkest in that little triad of sort of deserty colours, and I'm making sure that I build up smooth layers, leaving plenty of the dark in the undercuts, so that keeps that shadow in there, and most of the time focusing almost a bit like a zenithal, not completely because I'm going in around the edges as well, making sure there is a decent covering, but just in thin enough layers that I don't obliterate all of that shadow. And what you'll notice that I'm doing now is I've moved to that mid-tone on my little triad of paints, working even more top down with each colour that I use, making sure that I'm not obliterating the other two colours. So I'm using a little bit less paint each time and being quite delicate with the airbrush, and almost increasing that zenithal style paint job, basically painting in my highlights as much as I can with the airbrush to cut down that brushwork later on. There's a lot of troops to paint in an Astra Militarum army, and this is an army painting style tutorial. I'm not teaching you here how to win any awards for painting, so this is a really neat way of getting through large numbers of troops in a relatively quick way. You may have noticed in those pictures of the Rogal Dawn, and I talked about the leather areas and the sort of leather armour covering that was on the tank drivers. I'm still using that same brown paint scheme with this army, but just focusing it just onto the leather webbing and straps on certain areas, the boots, leather gloves, that kind of thing. And I'm using Cygor brown contrast paint as the base for that. It works really nicely, and because I've painted in relatively light colours, it covers very nicely, and you do get that slight bit of highlight showing through that you do with contrast or speed style paints. You could just leave it in certain areas, but it provides you with a bit of a guide. I find it provides me with a little bit of a guide for highlights later on. You can see where it's a little bit lighter, and you can almost add your normal brush highlights with a hairy brush where those lighter areas show, so you're sort of filling in, painting on the lines more than anything else, and it just gives a nice effect. It's also really quite nice to base coat in some of the thicker contrast style paints. They cover really nicely, they go on very smoothly, and they're quite nice to control. Sticking with that same ethos here for the black areas, I'm using Grim Black, and that includes an awful lot of the weapon as well. I want quite a dark blued weapon style rather than go for the camo coloured style. That's just something I go for because it's quite easy. Also black on the bit of hosing as well. So anywhere that's going to be metallic, be that the little cup or the little receiver on the side here of the comms unit, I just want to make sure that I'm painting them in black to give it a nice solid base, and I'll give them a very dull metallic look a little bit later on. To highlight those brown colours, I'm using two browns here from the Army Painter Fanatics range. I think in my original tutorial I was using some Tooth and Coats paints, are very, very similar colours, and because of the different units you really won't notice the difference. I've just started using these a little bit more recently, and they'll work just as fine. But essentially I'm using, like I've already mentioned, that Cygor brown base layer as the bottom tone, as the shade, and I'm using this as the mid-tone and the highlight, these two colours. So I'm going in with very, very simple layer highlighting. Again, remember this is just an army painting level tutorial, a good level army paint, but still army painting. So I'm focusing on about 50% of the coloured area as a mid-tone general highlight, and then afterwards I go in with that top highlight with slightly thinner highlights, focusing on the edges, doing the odd sort of raised edge highlight or something along the lines of that. I think I end up using 4 different metallic paints in this paint scheme. I hadn't really used them apart from on the tank before, because I've only painted just the black in on my table ready army at the moment on the weapon, so I could start from fresh. But metallics generally are metallics in terms of their colouring, and I'm trying out some P3 ones at the moment. I'll do a bit of a review at some point on the channel, but this is a very dark gunmetal first, and I'm giving it the lightest of dry brushes, and then I'm coming in with another 3 different metallic paints, all getting lighter in the spectrum. Again, very light highlights towards the top end of the weapon, but what I'm really focusing on here is the metal end of the melter gun. I'm going to be doing an effect on that, giving it the heat bloom in a moment. So I want a really smooth colour that gets very, very light towards the end, so I can work on that quite nicely. And quite often I would airbrush that, but with one single miniature like this, I've just decided to build it up with continuous dry brush layers and really, really focus focusing on really making it quite smooth, very little paint on the brush, and you can see you get that nice transition from very, very light on the end towards dark a little bit further down. There are other little bits of metallic as well, little straps and buckles and things like that, so I'm just picking that out with the same metallics while I have them on my palette. Before that though, we're returning to Cerberus Brown, so one of those three from that little triad. I'm just using it to tidy up and make a couple of the highlights pop. I don't want to do too much because that really starts adding in an awful lot of time to the miniature, but some of the areas of detail on the miniature can be picked out with the odd edge highlight here, like on the cloak, just to make it stand out a little bit more, add a little bit of definition, and just sort of make the miniature pop and look a little bit neater and more eye-catching overall. Not spending too much time on it like I just said, but just enough to make it a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Now these are the contrast or speed paint colours that I'm using for my heat bloom. Again, this is something I tend to do with the airbrush more often, especially if I'm working on larger batches. And even when I'm doing army projects and I'm doing heat bloom on maybe some tanks or something, I will tend to do it on the troops at the same time, even if I haven't painted the rest of the miniature. But I haven't done that here, and again I didn't want to crack out my airbrush for one miniature, so I'm just gently building them up with layers of contrast paint. And if you don't have too much paint on your brush, you don't have any type marks, and make sure you blend those away or feather those away, you can do a pretty reasonable job, as you can see here. Now we're moving on to some little white area. The little badge on the left shoulder pad, I'm using my own white and red design for all my army. It doesn't quite fit the official old guard codex stylings of them, I don't think. I'm making it half white and half red, using a bit of contrast, Blood Angels red here for the red half. I know that varies depending on different company officially, but I'm making it my own law for this little regiment, and then a little bit of blood red as well, just to add a highlight in. The reason I've chosen those colours is more just because it stands out and looks cool. I will make the law fit around the colour choices I've made afterwards. That same little trio of greys to whites that I used on that badge, I'm also using on the hair for this guard member here. I'm just starting with the grey and then building up the two-stage highlights with the sort of the grey white and then the pure white afterwards. And then using a little bit of holy white, and all of these speed paint whites are essentially white washes or glazes, just to run them into the detail and tidy it up a little bit. I tend to do lots of different skin methods, and one I'm doing a lot at the moment for standard style troops is to start with a sort of a dull or mid-tone or near mid-tone skin. And I'm actually going back to doing some washes at the moment, mostly because I'm really enjoying using the Army Painter skin wash that you can see here. I really don't use a lot of washes anymore, especially since contrast paints have come out, and with skin I tend to work my way up from dark to light, and I do a similar thing here, because as soon as the wash has dried in a moment, I do go back and sort of do standard layering highlighting afterwards. But in terms of getting a nice even balanced look with this flesh, I'm enjoying this at the moment. As I said, I change my mind, I do different things all the time, and that's good because you have multiple tools in your arsenal. And I do go back to that same base tone that I used before the wash went on, just to reinforce some of the areas. So very much traditional Citadel style army painting here, and then the mid-tone and the highlight, just to add definition to the tops of the cheeks, the nose, the forehead, that kind of thing, reinforcing where the light hits on the face. And then something I like to do an awful lot is use a couple of contrast paints just to add a little bit more shadow. So the purple goes into just the recesses where the skin meets clothing, usually adding extra shadow, and then the reddish colour just adds a little bit of warmth, and usually to the bottom third of the face. And this is a bit of ready mixed oil wash made by Scale 75. It's called Grease, and it's a very sepia brown mix, and I'm using it directly on the miniature that I haven't primed and protected. So I'm being very careful. I'm using an old brush. I'm just painting a little bit into a few recesses and around some of the metal areas to provide a little bit of shading. If I was wanted to cover the whole miniature in an oil wash, I may look to protect it first with some kind of varnish. But as long as your paint is fully dry, and this was the next day, a few breaks in painting, and you're careful with it, it's really, really good to use as a wash. And this is where I don't use normal Citadel style washes. I tend to use oil washes. You'll see I'm using it here on the weapon as well. It works very well over metallics. Metallic paints are usually quite robust and can handle it. And what happens is it runs into the recesses, really good capillary action, and doesn't form pooling or streaking like you get on other areas. So when it dries, it looks really cool, looks really weathered and dirty, which is exactly what I want for this look. I quite like the military modelling style thing. So there's some bright colours on here, but there's a lot of sort of old school military modelling effects as well. Also using it on my bases, as you can see, and the basing texture appearing on there mid filming. And this is a little bit of fast drying thinner. Anyway, you do want to tidy up your oil paints. This is the beauty. A little bit of clean thinner on the paintbrush. Anywhere there's a little bit of streaking showing, you can just wipe it off again. Even when it appears to be fully dry and has been drying for nearly a day or so, you can take it back off again. You don't want to be using any household type thinners. It has to be proper artist thinners like this, but you can just tidy it up and it just leaves it in the recesses, and it's really, really fantastic. Something you can't do the same with a standard wash. You have to go back and paint it again, a bit like I did on the face. Got a very simple basing scheme there. There's just texture paint down, which is a Vallejo dark earth, then that oil wash, and once it's dry, I'm just brushing in dry into the detail on the base 3 different textured pigments. These AK pigments are really quite silky and oily. It means they stick very well to the base. I won't seal them. You can do if you want to. I won't seal them on bases, although I blow the excess off and they sit in there absolutely fine because they're kind of in all of the detail of the textured basing, and it just looks really nice and dry and arid, which is a lovely effect. Adding a few tufts here. I'm using dead grass from Warpaint Figures, one of my favourite brands. These are 2mm ones, and then a nice little black rim to the base to finish it off. And that is them done. And obviously you saw them at the beginning from the picture on the Warcom article. I'm really looking forward to finishing the rest of the unit off and the rest of the army. I've got 3 units of standard Astra Militarum Cadian shock troops that are all base coated, ready for the oil stage and ready for their skin to be fully painted and highlighted and all the rest. There's still quite a lot of work, but I really want to get back to them and finish them because I think it'll be a really cool looking army overall once they're done with the Rogel Dawn. I've got some of the new tanks and things on the new tanks, I'll say the new people carriers and things on the way as well. So it'll look very, very cool. Lots of sort of North Africa World War II vibes going on with the theming and the colouring of that, and this is very, very deliberate. But let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know many of you will be here more often because of square-based miniatures, be that fantasy or even older historical stuff. So hopefully you forgive me when I do paint stuff like this once in a while. Sometimes it's because I've been sent something super cool by Games Workshop and I can't resist it. A bit like that in this case, but also because I do like 40k. I play it casually, occasionally. I've got a project building at the moment. In fact, a sort of a multi-pronged project at the moment. So while I won't cover everything on 40k, it is not a game I follow enough or know enough about to do that. So there's no danger of that at all. When it's about a faction that I'm interested in, about a project that I'm working on myself, you may well see some videos in sporadic bursts from time to time, and Astra Militarum will always be one of those things, and so with Space Wolves as well. So you will see the odd video from time to time pop up, and I hope if you're not a fan of 40k that you do forgive me that. I appreciate on the channel I do cover a wide range of different subjects and not just always Warhammer the Old World, but it won't be long to the next Warhammer the Old World video, so don't panic if that's more your flavour. If you do want to see more videos that are 40k related like that, please do let me know, because it's interesting for me to hear in the comments. I really want to paint the Red Terror. It's such a stunning miniature, and I've got a bit of an idea of how I may do it, but I'm only going to do it if I know enough people want to watch the video for it as well. So do let me know in the comments if enough people are interested in seeing me paint that, then I may well be more encouraged to do it. If you want to support me and the channel so I can make more different videos on more different subjects and put more content out there, the very best way of doing that is to support me on Patreon, because it's the money there that's so much more stable for me that I can afford basically to pay myself, take time out of my regular working in commission to work on making content. And it's as simple as that. I'm a commission painter most for my income, a little bit on YouTube, and the more I get support from patrons and things like that really help me move that business more towards YouTube, meaning I can make more content related stuff, which is really fun for me and hopefully more fun for you as a viewer. So if you are able to support me in that way, please do check it out. There's a link in the video description. Also check out the channel sponsor Counter Attack Bases, loads of wonderful gaming aids and custom dice as well. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.